Hello and welcome back. I am picking up straight from where we left off the last time. If you haven't seen the previous video, check it out. You can find it on my channel, or I'm gonna link it in the video description, or like somewhere here. I think you can do that in YouTube, so I'm gonna give it my best. Quick recap. We are trying to test drive outside in HAL JSON navigator, and where we have gotten off to last time was we have defined a little bit how we want to talk with the navigator. We want to call discover on an endpoint that, if it succeeds, will give us the status code of a 200 if it was a successful response, or if there is any client or server error, where we used fake HTTP status code here for client server error, it will return that status code. So one thing I quickly want to do is I'm quickly going to commit this, make sure it's all formatted properly and all the tests are passing. Okay, so then I'm surprised that ESLint is not complaining about us having implicit any on here. So I'm going to make this a number, and I'm going to deal with it another day. So, all right. It's bare bones navigator, or it's navigator.discover only returning status code for now. Cool. So we're in a clean state, it's committed, everything's good. All right. What do we want to deal with next? And I think what I would like to do next is I would like to have the navigator also return the resource that has been returned by the endpoint. So we have a 200 here, status determined if input succeeds, and I feel like I want to have a different test here that is resource is empty resource when discovering endpoint succeed, or discovering endpoint returns empty JSON object. So this here, and what we have here is we have to expect navigator.resource to strict equal this. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to call to JSON on my resource. So the resources here have a function to JSON, and that one returns a plain old JavaScript object in the form that you would want to return it from a service. So in that case, in the form that we get it here, which means this and this should strict equal to the same thing. We can probably even extract this here. We can say const resource is this. Then do that. So if we run this, it's of course going to complain here that resource to JSON is an invocation. Resource doesn't exist on navigator, so we are going to need a read-only resource, which is a resource or undefined. So, and if we run this now, it should probably say undefined doesn't have a to JSON. So we will need a resource, or, well, we can go with this for now. This dot resource is resource. And then here we want to say resource dot, and there already is a helper function written that takes a JSON object and makes it a resource. Response dot data. And then here, well, we don't care right now. So in order to make something pass, we can just say resource dot create and then deal with that later. Okay, that passes. What we don't have here is we don't really have tests covering this. So I feel like I want a test here that says navigator or status is undefined on new. Oh no, because we don't have. We do not have like an empty navigator because the constructor is private. So actually, this is not undefined. This is always a number here. And then right now, this is always a resource and not undefined. It might become undefined, but right now it isn't. And everything should still pass. So I was a bit too eager here. Yeah. I was a bit too eager here. Resource is empty resource when discovering and returns empty JSON object. And one thing I want to do next, just to make sure that this is actually passing, is resource has property when discovering endpoint returns JSON object with property. So we are going to need a const, just any key. So what we can do is we can use faker to create just a random word as our key. And I already have written a helper function to create a random property. So a property can be a Boolean, a number, basically any JSON property, a Boolean, a number, a string, an array, an object. And then what we want to do is the resource here, we want to say key is property, or actually, yeah, value property. And then what I want to be able to do here is there's a function here that is a get property function. And if I do key, I want this to strict equal value. So, and the reason why we want that is because just to see this fail, if we just do resource.create and create an empty new resource, this should fail with undefined. Because a resource is created without any properties, any links, anything. But if we do this from JSON with response.data, then now it's actually correctly passing that. Nice, so that is not too bad. I wonder if we want to get into navigating now. And then just see where it takes us. So if we discover an endpoint and then navigate on it, yeah, I quite like that idea. And we just see where it takes us, you know, let's just test. So what's the first test? There are a few scenarios I can think of. Just like it succeeds, it fails, we're trying to navigate to a link that doesn't exist. Maybe we should write this down here. It's like get succeeds, get fails, link doesn't exist on resource. I quite like this one first, because that requires the least setup code. Should it throw? I think it should throw. Okay, so throws when attempting to get link that doesn't exist, does not exist on resource. So expect navigator.get, and there will need a relation. So we're gonna say relation or non-existent relation. Oh, and of course we need to await this. Can we await this? Can we have async stuff in here? Oh, excuse me. Horrible. So if we do this, then to throw, then we need an error here. Well, to throw error, and we want to extract this here. Const relation is this, because we need it in here, and what we want to say here is something along the lines of relation, oh, actually does not exist on resource, or actually a link with relation. Oh, no. Single quote does not exist on resource. That is way too long, of course. We can hopefully break it down like this. So now we need a navigator, right? We know that the way to get a navigator is navigate URL. So we're going to need a const and now we will need to set this up to successfully return like we did here. So if we do this, and in that case it doesn't matter if this is just empty. Then this should throw that error. So property get does not exist. That makes sense. So we want get. Ah, it's a reserved keyword, isn't it? Reserved. Is it? Probably is, or is getter. We'll see. Get relation, which is a string, returns a promise of navigator. Because we said we want the navigator to always return like itself. And then we say const link is resource dot get link relation. here we say if link throw, well, technically we can just, well, if we want to do like the smallest step, we can just do a throw error with link with relation does not like this. Maybe a stop over here, maybe a stop over there. Run this. And the function did not throw.
One eternity later.
Expect function rejects to throw. Okay. So expect action rejects. What's that with to throw? Haha. Well, that's something new. All right. But of course that doesn't do very much yet, and it actually doesn't test our scenario very well, or it doesn't implement our scenario very well. So I wanna have a success here. I feel like we should succeed. And then we can deal with the failure later. So, oops, excuse me. No, struggling. So, status is 200 when getting relation succeeds. So any form of relation that technically can be just like any word again, because it doesn't matter. So fake word. And what we want to return here is our a relation URL. So, oh, actually, maybe we should be a bit more explicit. So, not explicit. That's always the question. How explicit do you want to be? So if we call this the we need to call it something. Link URL. That's like pointing at a resource. That's what the resource would look like. And then when we say get relation, then we don't want to throw this in. We want to say const navigator is this navigator get. Oh, of course. Oh, that is annoying. Do you have to do like... I don't like that I can't change it, but I understand why I can't. So I think you can either do this, or the other option would be to do it then, right? And then say no, don't need that in here. Okay, I don't know about that yet. I honestly don't know what I like better. I want to implement it like this and then see later what the whole usage of the API looks like. Because that's what I really care about, right? And this is the nice thing about outside-in TDD, just to like come back to a point, which is because I am calling my piece of code the way I would want a client of my library to call it, I can deal now with all of these problems, or they highlight these problems quite quickly. Okay. If we run this is gonna throw, right? So, oh, also this is not gonna work because we need a link URL here, and it can just return an empty resource for now. Discover is the first step, and then get is the actual action. So, why do you pass? Because I'm not running more tests. So, link with relation compiler does not exist in resource. So, actually, const link is resource dot this dot resource dot get link of relation. Interesting that yeah, because we currently always have a resource. And then we say if, so this function should actually return link or undefined. I would expect this here to say link or undefined. But if we do have a link, then what we want to do is we want to do a const response is await axios dot get link dot href. And then return a new navigator with response.status, and then right now resource.create, just to make this pass. Alrighty. Sorry. Don't need this, don't need that. All right. That works. So we can say, should this be a separate test or should this be the same? Like, status 200 getting relation succeeds. Is it a separate test? Resource has property when getting relation succeeds with object with property. Basically similar to the test that we did. Resource has property discovering returns JSON object with property, where we did like key and value. When getting relation succeeds with, wait, what are we naming here? I want to see them next to each other. Resource has property when discovering resource returns JSON object with property. Yeah, but it's like we're missing that this succeeds, right? Resources property when discovering endpoint succeeds with JSON object with property. Maybe just JSON. Resource. So that should be like linked resource has property when getting relation succeeds with JSON with property. And then we want the linked resource, big key value. We don't want to return an empty resource here, but the linked resource. And then we want to say navigator resource.get property of key. I copied it, but I didn't paste it, did I? So this should be like linked resource key. Yeah. Key to strict equal value. And what this means is that test should fail because right now we use resource create instead of resource. Oh, sorry, wrong. Here, resource create instead of resource from JSON of response.data. All right. I think there will be some duplication very soon that we can probably extract. And that's when we're gonna see the niceness of outside in really. I know there's like probably like a lot of code to write until we get to the point where we can break out things. But I think that's okay right now. Also I can give it multiple handlers. And I kind of feel like I want to extract something here to make this nicer. Like it feels wordy for what we're trying to do. But we can deal with that next time. Okay, we're gonna get the error working. So what we did here on the original one, we said 200, 200, and then status is status from response, right? This here. So that's what I want. So instead of it is succeeding, status is status from response when getting relation returns client or server error. And then I want to get these resource link URL relation. All of this is important. And then here, body can be this, but status needs to be status. And then we need this to be the status code, not a 200. So this is failing now because this is throwing. So try catch to the same as above, basically raw error. Const error is raw error dot to JSON. Return new navigator with error dot status and resource dot create. And this is something we want to deal with. We actually want like HAL APIs should return a HAL object also on errors. So we actually want to parse the data of the error at some point too. So we need to add a cheeky little to do here. Love me a to do, but we're gonna deal with it later. So first we're gonna make this pass, and it does pass. And now we can see that this and that is exactly the same, with the exception of link href. So I want to extract it. I want to extract this. Somewhere. Kind of feels like it needs to be in here because we create a new navigator. Actually, it doesn't, because we can just return status and resource. And then that one can say, okay, I'm gonna make a navigator out of this. So I feel like packing this up in an HTTP file. So if we create a new file here, maybe it should be client .ts. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this a little bit, actually I'm gonna move the navigator over here for now, okay? So we can have those next to each other. And I want to export a const get, which takes, well, an async const get, which takes a URL, which is a string, and returns well, something, doesn't it? So no, this doesn't belong here, right? It belongs here. And it's not going to return a navigator. I kind of want to name this like how HTTP client actually. Because it's not generic enough, it is very specific because it returns a resource. So status this, resource that, same here, status this, resource that, format, oh, I see, format, so, and then I feel like I need to export this as like a, well, not destructure, right? Something along like import HAL HTTP client from, I can't do that. return new const response is this. The navigator is response.status response.resource. Then we can get rid of this. And the nice thing is it's also that with the exception that this is link.href. Cool. That passes. So not the biggest. So first of all, promise response just to begin with. Okay. And this, yeah, I mean, okay, I'm not gonna add a type here. So there are a few things I don't really like about that. I don't like having to do this, but get is like such an overloaded word, and I don't really have a better idea of how to do that in TypeScript. So if someone knows, please let me know. And yeah, this doesn't have a type yet. Sure, we can add that. Not too crazy fussed about something like that in that case, because it's internal. But now we've seen something nice, which is we were able to refactor shared code into a separate file, which didn't affect our tests at all, right? Like all of our tests still only test the navigator and are completely unaffected by the fact that we just removed code into a separate file, right? And that's the nice thing about outside in TDD. Whereas if we would have thought, okay, we're probably going to have like reused code here, and where we want to make like an Axios request and then return like the status code and the resource, and we would have like started here, then maybe we wouldn't have started with that, right? Because we wouldn't have figured out that that's going to be like a shared part of code, or we would have figured it out, but our function interface would have been wrong. But also, you might then write tests for this first, get it wrong, then write tests for the navigator, and then realize that you've gotten it wrong, and now you need to change it. And what happens is the tests for this internal one are going to break, right? Because you're test driving the navigator now, and the risk of that is reduced with outside in. So now I'm actually going to call it here. I think we have like gotten a good amount of work done, and I've shown like a little bit of why I like outside in TDD. And especially like this last refactor was so simple, so easy, so straightforward, and none of our tests broke. And that makes me happy. That sparks joy. So I'm gonna leave it at that for now. I think I'm gonna continue with this. It's quite nice documenting the process a little bit. And you can check out that repository on GitHub, on my GitHub, which I can link in the video description as well. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.